Hi, everyone. This is Emily Evans from NREL. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to give folks another couple minutes to log in and join and get settled, and we will begin just a minute or two past the hour. Hi, this is Emily Evans from the National Renewable Energy Lab again. Thank you for joining the webinar presentation on the Water Resource Recovery Prize. I'm going to hand it off to Diana Bauer, who will kick us off. Diana, all you.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Diana Bauer, and I'm from the Advanced Manufacturing Office within the U.S. Department of Energy. We're absolutely excited about this prize competition and happy that you've joined us to hear more about it. First, I'm going to give a bit of context surrounding the prize, including talking about the Water Security Grand Challenge. Next, John Smeagol will give some details on what we're looking for in the prize applications. And then Emily Evans will talk through some of the mechanics of applying for the prize. And at the end, we'll take questions. You can enter questions in the question panel in your go-to webinar your go-to webinar panel, and if there are some sort of technical questions about the functionality of the webinar, we'll answer them as they are given, but otherwise we'll take other questions at the very end. Next slide, please. So the Water Resource Recovery Prize is a two-phase competition. We're right now in the middle of the first phase of the competition, and the goal of the prize is to accelerate the transition from conventional wastewater treatment. There's an echo. From conventional wastewater treatment to resource recovery from municipal wastewater. And when we're talking about resource recovery, we mean water, energy, nutrients, and other resources that you can determine as competitors. The next slide, please. So we're focusing on small to medium-sized facilities, and it's kind of the bigger end of medium-sized facilities, up to 50 million gallons per day of flow. And some of the reason for this is that the larger facilities are more likely to already be pursuing water resource recovery. And we're also looking for teaming that really helps to solidify the proposed approach. So teaming with folks who would benefit from the resources, folks who will purchase the resources, as well as technical partners and other partners. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this is part of the Water Security Grand Challenge, which is an initiative that's led by DOE, and it cuts across multiple agencies, multiple offices. It has 5 goals related to technology and innovation to meet the global need for safe, secure, and affordable water. And this prize addresses the 4th goal, doubling resource recovery from municipal wastewater. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it off to John Smeagol to give you a little bit more detail on this prize competition. Next slide.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. This is John Smeagol, and I'm just going to run through some of the requirements that we're looking for from the application. This slide here, at a high level, sort of captures the prize timeline. We'll be talking in more detail in subsequent slides about the specific phases. Also, I just want to allude to towards the end of the application, as Diane already mentioned, we're going to be talking about, Emily will be taking lead on details of actually how to submit your applications through the HeroX platform, and the specific, where to click and what to do when you're actually getting to the point where you're submitting. We'll also talk about specific deadlines at that point too. The takeaway from this slide, realistically, as Diana mentioned, is that the prize is actually open right now. We're in the midst of phase 1, which began at the end of January. There are 2 phases to the prize. The first phase will be open until late April 28th. We are looking to make up to 10 awards of $50,000 each for successful applicants, followed by phase 2, which will start once phase 1 is complete, and that'll be a longer phase, about a year, and we're looking at making 2 awards at that point for up to $250,000 each. Next slide. Phase 1 overview. We're looking for basically 4 components, broadly defined, 4 components for an application. The first is a technical description that really characterizes the resource recovery problem and the opportunity, and also the proposed solution, including a discussion of viability and cost effectiveness. It's very important. It's not just an academic exercise. Here we're looking at standing up water resource recovery, small and medium-sized facilities in a real-world context. A second component of the phase 1 submission would be sort of high-level facility engineering schematics, one before deployment of the proposed technology and the proposed solution, and then one after, sort of showing how the solution fits within the broader context of an operating water resource recovery facility. We're also looking, and I've alluded to this before, for a robust business case, something that demonstrates improvement of resource recovery relative to the existing baseline, and also demonstrates the viability of said resource recovery strategy. And then finally, a discussion of the team. We're going to talk about teams a lot on this because we feel that moving beyond just the fence line of the water resource recovery facility to, as Diana mentioned, potential customers, potential users, potential beneficiaries of the recovered resources, as well as technical partners and other partners. Next slide. Phase 2. I think I mentioned this earlier, but in order to be eligible for Phase 2, you have to have submitted and been selected in Phase 1. Phase 2 competitors would be expected to provide a bit more detail, whereas Phase 1 might be characterized, the submission, as largely a paper exercise, a description, analytics, things like that. Phase 2 would have more of a robust demonstration capability. Specific components of that Phase 2 application have not yet been distributed. We're waiting until after the close of Phase 1, at which point, prior or around the same time that we make the announcements of the winners of Phase 1, we would be providing additional details on what we'd expect in terms of the necessary components of a Phase 2 submission. And as I did mention, it would be roughly a year. So if we calculate that the Phase 1 is closing at the end of April, announcements should be sometime in May, towards the end of May. Realistically, Phase 2 would close end of May, maybe beginning of June of 2021. Next slide. And this is really just to capture in one single slide so as to get rid of any ambiguity, sort of reiterate the applications. The April 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, that is a hard deadline. Emily will be discussing the ins and outs of that when she runs through the HeroX, but that's what we're looking at. Phase 1 submissions due April 28th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to announce the winners roughly a month later, and at that point or soon thereafter, preceded by guidance on the sorts of things we're going to be expecting as part of Phase 2. Phase 2 would be opening, and then 1 year later, we would be selecting and then announcing winners. So again, as I alluded to earlier, June, July of 2021 would be the winner announcements for Phase 2, the two prizes, $250,000 each. Next slide. Eligibility, very detailed, small slide font here. Both Phase 1 and Phase 2 are open only to citizens or permanent residents of the United States. They can be not necessarily individuals, but they can be organizations, public entities, townships, tribes, corporations, other organizations, academic entities, as long as they maintain a primary place of business or operations in the United States. A group of individuals acting as a single submitter, a single competitor, provided that the account holder, again, going back to HeroX, that makes a submission is a United States citizen or permanent resident. Other more fine-tuned requirements include that we're looking only at small and medium-sized water resource recovery facilities being a part of applications. As Dinah indicated, for purposes of this competition, we're defining small or mediums to include facilities that treat no more than 50 million gallons per day based on a calendar year average. DOE employees, as well as federal employees acting within the scope of their employment, are not eligible to apply for this prize. And similarly, employees of DOE national labs are not eligible to participate. For specific and very much more detailed requirements in terms of eligibility, consult the HeroX site, which I'll be providing a link for later, that has the rules document, which has got a great deal more detail than what we're running through here on the webinar. Next slide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Phase 1 key submission elements and expectations there. Next slide. Okay, teams should submit 2 facility engineering schematics. We provided one here, sort of a stylized example of a water resource recovery facility. This would be the one sort of before, and we also would like one that has after, that essentially includes the proposed water resource recovery solution or technology and how it actually fits within the context of existing operations. This is going to help the reviewers, the judges, really understand, get a better idea of how things are proposed to work. Next slide. A business case. I've talked about this before. It's not just about technical feasibility. We're not just talking about can you do it. We're talking about can we go outside of the fence line of the water resource recovery facility to see if we can demonstrate or see if the applicants can demonstrate something of value that can be captured and can benefit the sort of the downstream partners, whether they represent agricultural interests, whether they represent municipalities, whether we represent consumers of energy. Depending on what the specific technological solution is proposed, we're looking not just the water resource recovery, but partners as well as ultimate beneficiaries. And the business case is going to be the way in which successful applicants will demonstrate this holistic approach, not just a technological viability, but the whole soup to nuts version of this demonstration. All right, next slide. All right, so this is, I think, a really effective document that sort of captures a sample business case structure. It really, if you're kind of looking from left to right, looking at the bottom, we're talking about the cost structure. What are the capital and operating costs that are associated with the business proposition? And then the revenue streams that could be generated from the resource recovered. We're looking at the partners as well as the customers, again, as we look from left to right. So the questions that would be asked, for example, who exactly is going to be involved in both the technological deployment, but the sort of the supply chain with respect to that. Obviously, the water resource recovery facility is a big part of that, but there could be other components depending on what exactly is being recovered. So we're looking at who exactly is involved. That's an important part. Moving across towards the middle, what exactly are the products and services that are being offered? What customers are being serviced? What exactly are they getting out of this? Again, this is capturing the movement from the facility to outside the facility and downstream. We're talking about customer relationships. What relationships already exist within the broader context of the facility and the people that it serves, and what relationships need to be developed in order to make a viable business case. Like I said, this is a sort of careful, thoughtful structure that we consider to be key elements of a business case. We are not saying that every question here is included. It's entirely possible we've left some out, or applicants are welcome to add to this, or if they want to adopt a different structure. But we think this is a pretty good demonstration of the sort of a business case structure as we see it. It's sort of a systematic approach to the development of a business case, which is why we included it in the rules. All right, next slide. And I'm harping on this, and well, that's with good reason. We see that the team approach is essential to bringing in applications that we're willing to offer prizes to. So it's the water resource recovery facility plus a range of potential. We're not prescribing who is all involved, but we recognize that there are a number of other players that could be involved. Technology developers, we're talking about customers, demanders, beneficiaries, other stakeholders. It could be utilities, could be academic researchers. It could be other business financial interests that might have a stake in this as it stands up and becomes local governments, nonprofits, the host of opportunities. We're not trying to be prescriptive, but all together, the resource recovery facility and these other team players, these stakeholders, represent what we consider to be the team that would be submitting an application for ultimate selection. All right, next slide. Okay. The HeroX site is going to have more details if you're looking at the rules. But I mean, just at a high level, if we are asking for these sort of 4 areas, clearly we're going to be judging the quality of the applications on these four areas. We're looking at the problem or the opportunity and the proposed solution, the viability of said solution, the technical engineering schematics, how well the applicant demonstrates their measurement of performance, and both before and after. We're looking at the robustness of the business case, how well they extend this solution outside the fence line of the facility. And we're looking again at team composition that makes sense and is described in such a way. As indicated there on the right part of the slide, the judges are going to be looking at each segment and scoring them on a sort of 1 to 6 scale, and these will be summarized and weighted accordingly, and ultimately used to select the winners of the prize. All right. And as the rules document, again, the link there at the bottom, the HeroX site, water resource recovery. There's a number of resources on the site under water resource recovery, but specifically the rules is at that last link right there. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to run through some of the nuts and bolts of navigating the HeroX site. Emily?
Thank you, John. This is Emily Evans from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We are working with DOE very closely to administer the prize. What I'd like to do today is run through how to find the prize and then sign up and eventually submit your entry. So on this slide, you'll see a screenshot of the HeroX page that you'll see when we get there, but I'm going to walk you through a couple different ways to finding this page. Jackie, could you make me, or am I already? Perfect. Thank you. All right, we're waiting for this to come up. So the first way to find the Water Resource Recovery Prize Challenge is to go to AmericanMadeChallenges.org. On this site, you can learn a little bit about the American Made Challenges program in general, why it exists, the motivations for it, and then also below you can dive into any number of our prizes. These prizes are all run by different technology offices within the U.S. Department of Energy. And down here on the second row, you can find the Water Resource Recovery Prize. To learn more, you click on it. It'll have some background on the prize, give you some important information. You can find the important dates, who can participate, but most importantly, you can sign up to join the challenge. And by clicking on that link, that will bring you to our HeroX prize platform, the HeroX site. It's a separate website from the .org pages, and this is where we handle all of the submission requirements, and there's some other resources here that you can take advantage of. The first thing I would encourage you to do is to follow the challenge. This will make sure that you receive any important prize updates, learn about the prize. You'll get notifications, reminders when submissions are due. You will need to create a HeroX profile, which if you haven't done that already, will look something like this. When you go to follow the prize, it will prompt you to sign up. First name, last name, email, password, all very standard items. And then once you've created your profile, you will then be able to participate in the prize. Down below, we'll get to the Begin Entry button. You'll have an overview. This will give you some key information about the prize stage, prize goals, guidelines. You can see some more information here, a link to the official rules, our prize inbox, which you can submit questions to, clarifications. You do not submit your submissions to the prize inbox. That's all handled through HeroX. And again, we'll get through that a little bit later. You can see the timeline. It'll tell you where you are in the timeline, important deadlines, updates. Many of you might have seen the webinar updates that we posted. We will continue to post updates. Typical things that we post on challenges is when you can expect a winner announcement. We'll remind you about submission deadlines. You can also participate in the forum. You are welcome to post any topic here that you'd like. You can talk about the prize itself. You can ask questions. NREL, myself, will be moderating the forum, so we'll keep an eye out. We'll respond. If you have a question that you think is great for everyone participating in the challenge, the forum is a perfect place to go. Or if you don't feel comfortable posting your question publicly, feel free to always email waterresourceprize@nrel.gov. You can also see the community of followers, and that's everyone who signed up as interested in the prize. Resources is another important tab. Currently, there's a phase 1 submission template that you can download. It's a Word doc. It walks you through all of the submission elements that you need to include, as well as a link to the rules. The rules, I would encourage everyone who wants to submit an entry to the prize to read the rules very carefully. It gives lots of important information, not only on the submission elements, but what the judges will be looking for when they go to score your submission, as well as important information on eligibility. So when you go to, say you've signed up, you're ready to submit your entry, how you will do that is you will click on this button here. It says Begin Entry. And then you'll be asked to, I've already done this, but you'll be asked to accept a legal agreement. It's our standard legal agreement. And then you'll be asked to give your submission a title, a short description, upload an image. How did you hear about the challenge? You'll upload a separate cover page. You can also include the cover page in the technical narrative, but for this challenge, we would like you to submit your cover page separately, and that will be made public. You can see within the submission form, as well as in the rules, the elements that will be made public and those that will be kept private. We'll ask for a submission summary slide. Again, this will be made public, but not scored. And then your technical narrative. Your technical narrative is really the meat of your submission, and we'll have all of those components that John discussed. And then you can also opt to include letters of commitment or support. And then you will save and preview, and you will get a confirmation screen once you've uploaded all of the required areas, as well as an email confirmation. I would encourage you, as you're putting together your submissions, to submit all your elements a day or two before the deadline. If you have any technical difficulties when uploading your submission, send us an email as soon as you know that you're experiencing technical difficulties. We are here to help, and we want to have you be successful, but if we don't have documentation of a technical difficulty ahead of time, our hands can be tied later on when we're trying to get your submission into the system, because we really do have to adhere to that deadline. So please, please, please submit early and let us know if you encounter any difficulties. So from there, we're happy to take any questions that you might have about the prize. You can use the question box that's on your control panel. Just go ahead and type in your questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Of course, if you don't want to ask them in this public forum, you're always welcome to email us at waterresourceprize@nrel.gov, and we have that email for you on the next slide as well. So we have our first question, and the question is, can we use renewable energy systems such as solar and wind? John or Diana, would you like to take that?
Yeah, we are not picking technologies. So the short answer is, if renewables are part of your solution, then you can submit it.
Thank you for that. Next question. What if a municipality is concerned about cyber attack disrupting water supply? Does that qualify for an entry?
My gut would say probably not. I don't know if that represents a resource that could be somehow conveyed to other folks. So I don't know if cybersecurity enhancement specifically would be considered a water resource that was recovered.
So
that's not
this
to
is
say, yeah. Go ahead, Diana.
Yeah. So I mean, I think if one were to kind of incorporate cybersecurity into a broader solution that had resource recovery. I mean, this is resource recovery, so it's not sort of generic funding for water resource recovery facilities. It's specifically for resource recovery. But if there's a a broader systems approach that also incorporates cybersecurity as well as resource recovery, or for that matter, renewable energy as well as resource recovery, that seems like that could be competitive, definitely.
Thank you. If we are recovering, next question is, if we are recovering multiple products, including water, what purity of water do we need to produce? Are there effluent guidelines?
No guidelines specifically laid out in the rules, but an application would be wise to take a look at what levels in terms of measuring its performance. When I alluded to the performance measures or performance metrics of the system pre and post, I think that those would be variables that would be captured in the description of the system performance. So the answer is good idea to include, but we have not established some sort of level that must be met for a successful application.
Yeah, I mean, another way to answer that is that, we're looking for teaming with customers for the resource. So if there's an argument that, a particular customer for the resource is interested in quality of a certain level, I think that would be the way to go. Or if you wanted to go for quality of some sort of established standardized level, and kind of talk broadly about customers, that would be a different way to go. But I think if you're connected to customers, and the customers are part of your team, you're on good ground.
And Diana's right. We haven't, but we haven't defined some number that has to be met in terms of effluent standards.
Perfect. Thank you both. Next question. Do we need to have a pilot plant in phase 1 to prove the technology?
There needs to be a plant that is a member of the team. The word pilot necessarily or seems to imply somehow that the technology solution it would be up and running and operating. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There needs to be a water resource recovery facility as part of the team, but the word pilot is one that I would shy away from as to whether or not it's actually this technological solution is deployed. It could be, or partially deployed, but that's not required necessarily.
Thank you. Next question. As PhD students in public school, can we participate?
As long as you meet the eligibility requirements spelled out in the rules document, there's no restriction on PhD students.
Thank you. Next question. Who scores the submissions? And I can take that one.
Go ahead.
And John, feel free to jump in. The submissions are scored by a panel of subject matter experts. They come from the U.S. Department of Energy, NREL, and sometimes industry experts as well. All submissions are scored by a panel of judges, expert reviewers. Typically, there's 3 to 4, and then we take all of those scores into account. And John, if you'd like to add on to that.
Yeah, the specific entities or agencies that might be involved, not necessarily determined. It's possible that there might be representatives from another federal agency, but the selection process for judges is ongoing, but your characterization of them and how they actually do the scoring is accurate.
Thank you. Next question. What is the value of water being produced that we can use in economic analysis of the proposed technology?
Diana, do you want to jump in, or do you have a...
Sure. I mean, I can answer that in the sense of basically we're thinking about markets, so products and customers. So the costs that you can look at in your analysis is the cost that your customer is willing to pay. So I think we don't have a standardized prices or costs that we're looking for. We're looking for producing resources that customers are willing to pay for.
Local customers, so it really does depend on
right
on the local conditions. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
And do teams need to have a signed letter from the water resource treatment plant who participates on the team?
Off the top of my head, I don't know if we specifically said it had to be a signed letter, but I would say probably. I would defer to the rules because I haven't memorized them, but there needs to be some form of commitment from the resource recovery facility. I don't know if we specifically said it had to be a signed letter or as opposed to, just some sort of agreement. But I defer to the rules in terms of what specific document is required to demonstrate that the water resource recovery facility is in fact on board as part of the team.
And we'll get a definitive answer on that from the rules and post it to the frequently asked questions on HeroX later today.
That's a good idea.
Great. I have one final question, but the audience is still welcome to submit additional questions if you have some that pop up. If you win, is this prize similar to grant, where there are milestones and deliverables associated with the prize? And John, if you'd like, I can take this one as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I know what the answer is, but go ahead.
And the answer is no, that this is not a grant. If you are successful in phase 1 and you win the cash prize, that is a straight cash prize with no strings attached. We hope that you will take that prize money to further your innovation and your idea and compete in phase 2, but that is not a requirement. Next question, does the water resource recovery facility get any rights to the technology being proposed?
Ooh, legal question. The short answer is I don't know. I would have to discuss that with the legal counsel types. So unless you know, Emily, from past experience on other prizes, I will have to kind of get an official GC answer to that one.
I do have some experience with this, and typically that is out of the purview of our prize administration role. That's really typically between teams and their partners. Any IP issues, that's something that you need to determine. But again, we will post a formal response to that on HeroX. And then we just received another question that's, can you send this webinar to us? And yes, absolutely. We will post a recording of this webinar to HeroX, where under Resources tab, you will be able to view this recording. I'll leave a couple more minutes for questions. We're very excited that you all are interested in the prize, and we're very excited to see all the submissions that are going to come through. If there's no additional questions, I'm not seeing anything come through. Again, you can always post questions to the HeroX form. You can email them to us at You can email them to us at waterresourceprize@nrel.gov. That email address is up on your screen. Please tell your colleagues, other people who might be interested in the prize, about the prize. We always appreciate the word of mouth promotion. And if you have any additional information or any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, John. Thank you, Diana, for the webinar. And that will conclude our presentation.